There are moments in life when everything seems to fall apart. You lose someone you thought would stay forever. The door you've been knocking on suddenly slams shut. You feel betrayed, abandoned, unloved. But what if I told you that every rejection was a redirection? That what felt like punishment was actually divine protection? That the pain you thought would break you was a cosmic rerouting meant to save you from something you couldn't see? Scorpio, there are things you will never know happened because the universe moved them before they reached you. No alarms, no lightning in the sky, just silence, and the feeling that something strange happened, but you can't explain why you're still standing. You see, Scorpio is not protected loudly. You are protected quietly, fiercely, and absolutely. Because you are not just a person, you are a portal, a soul with deep karma, rare missions, and a frequency that many fear, but few understand. The universe knows this, and it knows how many forces have tried to silence you, sabotage you, and erase you. But every time something invisible stood between you and the impact. You didn't notice it at the time, but today, I'm going to show you 10 times the universe protected you without your permission, without your awareness, and without making a sound. This is not about superstition, this is spiritual fact. And once you hear these stories, you may realize you were never alone. You were just being watched over by something older, wiser, and stronger than anything that ever tried to hurt you. So listen carefully, because by the end of this video, you might just see your life and your survival completely differently. Let's begin. Time 1, the rejection that saved you. There was a time not too long ago when someone walked away from you. It could have been a lover, a friend, an employer, maybe someone you saw a future with, maybe someone you trusted blindly. And it didn't end with a dramatic fight or a clear explanation. It just ended. They drifted, ghosted, pulled back. They didn't explain, and you didn't chase. But you felt it. You felt the sudden heavy silence, the wound of being dismissed without reason. And you told yourself, maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I should have done more. You tortured yourself, replaying every moment, trying to find the mistake you made. But here's the truth. No one told you. It wasn't you. It was your energy. Scorpio energy is magnetic, but it's also mirroring. You reflect people's shadows back to them. You reveal what's unhealed, what's manipulative, what's weak. And not everyone can handle that. So when they pulled away, it wasn't punishment, it was protection. Because had you stayed longer in that relationship, you would have been slowly dismantled emotionally, spiritually, even financially. This person may have carried envy they never voiced. They may have planned to exploit your loyalty. They may have been deeply insecure but wore the mask of confidence. And Scorpio, you would have kept giving. You would have tried to heal them. You would have absorbed their pain and thought it was your fault. But the universe knew something you didn't. It saw what they said about you behind your back. It saw their true motives hidden under compliments. And it whispered to them, leave. Sometimes when people disappear from your life without reason, it's because something divine whispered in their ear to walk away. Not because you were weak, but because you were being spared. And isn't it strange that after they left, your life began to change? Your energy started to feel lighter. You began focusing on yourself again. You didn't have to explain your intuition anymore. You stopped walking on eggshells. The ache was real, yes, but so was the peace that followed. That wasn't a coincidence. It was a cosmic extraction, a surgical removal of a threat you couldn't yet see. Scorpio, you may never get the closure you thought you needed, but what you got instead was protection in disguise. And the more spiritually aware you become, the more you'll start to see. Rejection is rarely a loss. It's a redirection. It's rescue. Life lesson from time 1. Don't grieve every ending, especially the ones that didn't make sense. Sometimes the universe removes what your heart is attached to, so your soul can finally breathe. Time 2. The job you didn't get was never meant to be. You prepared for that interview, like your life depended on it. You polished every word, practiced every answer, maybe even imagined how your name would look on the office door. You knew you were qualified, maybe even overqualified. And when they didn't call you back, when the email finally came and it started with, "We regret to inform you," your stomach dropped, your confidence cracked. You asked yourself all the hard questions. Was I not impressive enough? Did I say the wrong thing? Was there someone better? But what if the real answer is the job was never meant for someone like you? Not because you were unworthy, but because you were too powerful for what they were building. Scorpio, when you enter a space, you don't just bring skill, you bring intensity. You see the unspoken, you feel the politics in the room before anyone says a word, and you don't play shallow games. That energy, it's a threat to systems built on manipulation, to workplaces full of secrecy, to leaders who talk about transformation but fear actual change. What you didn't know was this. Behind the company's polished website and smiling team photos, there was chaos, turnover, favoritism, spiritual dryness. If you had entered that space, your light would have dimmed not from incompetence, but from spiritual suffocation. The universe knew. It saw the office dynamics. It saw the underpaid employees burning out behind the scenes. It saw your aura and said, "Not here, not this time." And maybe, just maybe, you didn't get that job because 6 months later you'd get offered something better. Or maybe you'd be forced to start something on your own, something no boss could ever take from you again. Sometimes the closed door was never really closed. It was locked for your safety. Because had you walked through it, you wouldn't have been free, you would have been owned. Life lesson from time 2. What doesn't choose you might be what saves you. Don't mourn the opportunities that didn't happen. The universe isn't trying to keep you small, it's trying to protect your soul alignment. Time 3, the toxic friend who disappeared without warning. There was someone in your life, a friend who once knew everything about you. They saw the side of you few ever get close to. You told them your secrets, you trusted their silence, you believed they were safe, but then out of nowhere they began to pull away. At first it was subtle. They stopped replying as quickly. Their tone changed. They no longer celebrated your wins the same way. Eventually, they were gone. No confrontation, no real reason, just silence. And again, you blamed yourself. You wondered if you had said something wrong, if your emotions were too much, if your darkness scared them away. But Scorpio, you must understand this. Your intuition never lies. You felt the shift before the goodbye ever arrived, because their energy had already changed long before their words did. And what you didn't know was what they were secretly carrying behind your back. They smiled with you, but envied your power. They listened to your dreams, but resented your growth. They stayed close, not because they admired you, but because they wanted to study you, mimic you, outshine you. But the universe saw what you couldn't. It heard the conversations they had when you weren't in the room. It witnessed the subtle jealousy, the way they took your ideas and called them theirs, the way they whispered your weaknesses when you weren't around to defend yourself. And so, the universe intervened. Suddenly they became too busy. They stopped checking in. They made excuses. And finally, they disappeared. What felt like abandonment was actually a divine extraction. You didn't lose a friend, you lost a parasite. And notice what happened after they left. You felt lighter. Your energy returned. You laughed without the feeling of being watched. You began to trust yourself more because their voice wasn't in your head anymore. That wasn't random, that was protection. You were being prepared for deeper friendships, truer alliances. Ones that don't compete with your light but hold space for it to grow. Life lesson from time 3. When a friend leaves without explanation, don't rush to fill in the blanks with guilt. Sometimes the silence is not a punishment. It's the sound of the universe removing someone who was never meant to walk your full path. Time 4. the illness that slowed you down before you crashed. It began with fatigue. Not the kind you could sleep off, but the kind that soaked into your bones. Your body was slowing down. Your mind was foggy. You felt heavy, sluggish, disconnected from the fire that once made you unstoppable. Doctors may have said it was stress or anxiety or hormones, but deep inside, something told you this was more than physical. Scorpio, when your body breaks, it's rarely random, especially your body, because your body is not just biology, it's an antenna. It listens, it absorbs. And when you ignore the warnings from your spirit, your body becomes the loudspeaker. But here's what most people don't understand. That illness, that burnout, that strange, inconvenient sickness that came out of nowhere, it may have saved your life. Because before the symptoms arrived, you were pushing too hard, giving too much, sacrificing sleep boundaries, self-care, all in the name of duty, love, ambition, or survival. You were on a path to self-destruction, to collapse, to giving everything until you had nothing left. And the universe knew you wouldn't stop unless something stopped you. So it did, not with a car crash, not with a loss, but with a slow, confusing, sacred fatigue, one that forced you to cancel, to rest, to say no. You may have resented it at the time. You may have cursed your body, frustrated by how it betrayed you. But what if I told you your body wasn't betraying you? It was defending you, slowing you down, before something much darker could speed up. Maybe you were headed toward the wrong career. Maybe the person you were giving all your energy to was draining your spirit dry. Maybe the life you were building was never meant to hold your soul. And so the universe whispered through weakness. It protected your destiny by interrupting your momentum. Because destruction is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like working yourself into an early grave. Sometimes it looks like success that's secretly killing you. Life lesson from Time 4. Stop apologizing for needing rest. When your body breaks down without warning, it's often because your soul has been screaming for help in silence. The universe does not slow you down to punish you, it slows you down to realign you. Time 5. The love that didn't stay because it wasn't meant to grow with you. You thought they were the one. The way they looked at you, the way they said your name, the connection that didn't need words, it all felt cosmic. There was fire. There was chemistry. There were nights where time didn't exist, and mornings where your souls still echoed inside each other. Scorpio, when you love with every part of you. Not the surface level love most people are used to. You dive, you merge, you commit at the soul. And that's why when it ended, it didn't just break your heart, it broke your sense of reality. You tried to make sense of it. You replayed the last conversations. You looked for signs. You begged the universe for clarity. Why would something that felt so real leave me? But here's the truth you couldn't see at the time. That person wasn't meant to grow with you because they were only designed to activate you. They were a mirror, a reflection of a version of you that needed to wake up. They came into your life to crack something open, to show you your depth, your wounds, your patterns, your potential. But they couldn't stay. Because if they had stayed, you wouldn't have transformed. The relationship would have kept you cycling through the same emotional loops. It would have felt good, but kept you small. It would have comforted your fears, but not challenged your soul. You see, there's a difference between soulmates and spiritual assignments. And many times, the person who felt like home was actually the one sent to shake you out of your old self. They were never meant to complete you. They were sent to awaken you. And the moment your soul got what it needed from that connection, the universe stepped in. Things fell apart. Not because you failed, but because you graduated from that version of yourself. Yes, it hurt. Yes, the memories still visit you when the nights get quiet. But one day, and maybe that day is today, you'll realize you didn't lose love. You gained clarity. You gained a new standard, a new level of consciousness. And most of all, you gained yourself back. Life lesson from time 5. Not all love stories are meant to last. Some are meant to burn through you to light the way forward. Trust that when love leaves without reason, it may be because your spirit is moving into a space that they were never designed to enter. Time 6. The missed opportunity that would have trapped you spiritually. There was something you wanted badly. Maybe it was a move to another city, a partnership in a business, a chance to join a project or be part of something that felt big. On the surface, it looked perfect. It aligned with your goals. The timing felt divine. And deep down, you were ready to say yes with your whole being. But then, it slipped away. The call didn't come. The contract fell through. The opportunity went to someone else, and you were left feeling forgotten, disappointed, like the universe had turned its back. You told yourself, that was my moment. Why didn't it work? But Scorpio, what you didn't realize was that moment was a trap. Not in an obvious dramatic way, but in the kind of trap that's hard to escape from once you're inside. The kind that looks like success, but slowly begins to own your time, energy, soul. That opportunity would have looked good on your resume, but it would have suffocated your spiritual evolution. It would have required you to shrink yourself, to silence your intuition, to mold your energy around people who didn't deserve access to your depth. You would have been constantly negotiating your truth, holding your tongue, diluting your fire so others could feel comfortable. And the universe saw that version of the future, and it said no. Because Scorpio is not meant to fit into someone else's limited framework. You are here to disrupt, to transform, to go deep, and that opportunity would have demanded you stay shallow. So the universe blocked it, not out of cruelty, but because your next level requires sovereignty, not slavery. You might not have known what you were being saved from, but if you had said yes to that opportunity, you would have slowly started abandoning yourself piece by piece. Instead, something strange happened. Time passed. Your heart began to clear, and a different path began to emerge, one with more meaning, one that didn't require you to trade your soul for success. And that's how the universe works. It will close doors you desperately want to enter, because it knows what's behind them. You don't. Life lesson from time 6. Don't fight the silence that follows a missed opportunity. Sometimes no answer is the universe shouting, that wasn't for you, and you deserve more than you can currently see. Time 7. The sudden move or separation that felt like chaos but was actually divine alignment. It came out of nowhere. Maybe it was a breakup, a sudden relocation, a roommate situation that crumbled, a family fallout that forced you to leave. Or perhaps you didn't even make the choice made you. One day you were settled. The next day you were packing your life into boxes, or walking out of a house that once felt like home, or watching people you thought would always be there disappear. And it didn't feel brave, it felt chaotic, disorienting, painful. You asked yourself, why now? Why like this? Why am I being ripped away from what I built? But Scorpio, what you didn't know was that the ground under your feet had become poisonous, not visibly, not physically, but energetically. The space you were living in, the environment, the people, the energy had begun to shift. The air was getting heavier. Your instincts were flaring up. Your sleep became shallow. You felt watched, drained, second-guessed. But you didn't want to leave. You told yourself you could handle it. You're a Scorpio, you survive, you endure, you adapt. You stayed longer than you should have, until the universe had no choice but to force the exit. The friendship turned toxic. The lease ended unexpectedly. The support system vanished. You were thrown out of your comfort zone without a safety net. And it was terrifying. But months later, when you were in a new space, a new energy, you realized something shocking. You were breathing again. Your thoughts were clearer. Your intuition returned. And for the first time in a long time, you felt free. That wasn't luck, that was spiritual architecture. Because had you stayed in that old environment any longer, your soul would have withered, your gifts would have dulled, you would have slowly started betraying yourself for comfort. Scorpio, you are not designed for stagnation. You are a sign of transformation, purging rebirth. The universe knows that. And when you ignore the signs, it creates the storm for you. So don't resent the separation. Don't hate the move. It was the rescue you never saw coming. Life lesson from time 7. When everything around you falls apart suddenly, ask not why me, but what was I being pulled away from before it consumed me? Sometimes your relocation isn't rejection, it's realignment. Time 8. The betrayal that exposed the hidden enemy. It started with trust. The kind of trust Scorpio rarely gives, but when given, it's sacred. You let them in. You told them things you hadn't told anyone. You defended them when others warned you. You believed in their intentions even when their actions were inconsistent. And then it happened, the betrayal. Maybe it was subtle at first. A rumor you heard, a shift in energy, a strange look, a feeling in your gut. Then came the reveal, undeniable, cutting, unforgettable. They used what you gave them in confidence against you. They twisted your truth. They tried to turn others against you. And worst of all, they acted like you were the villain. You were left stunned, heartbroken, furious. But Scorpio, hear this, that betrayal was a blessing in disguise. Because that person was never loyal to your soul, they were loyal to the version of you they thought they could control. And what you didn't see was how long they had been working against you in silence, in shadows, with smiles that hid strategy. The betrayal didn't create the enemy, it revealed the enemy. The truth had been growing quietly behind your back. But the universe said, enough. And so it pulled the curtain. It let the knife slip so you could see exactly who was holding it. And yes, it hurt, because betrayal is personal, especially for someone like you who values loyalty like oxygen. But what would have happened if you had never found out? They would have stayed close, feeding off your light, copying your ideas, undermining your intuition, and you would have kept them near thinking they were safe. The betrayal was brutal, but it was also a spiritual intervention. It was the universe saying, you've outgrown this illusion. It's time to know the truth. And once you knew you couldn't unsee it, you stopped apologizing. You stopped shrinking. You stopped giving your power to the wrong people. Scorpio. The wound was real, but the wisdom was eternal. Life lesson from time 8. Betrayal doesn't break you. It breaks the illusion that someone ever truly stood beside you. When someone reveals their shadow, don't mourn the loss, honor the truth, because truth is the most powerful protection of all. Time 9. The delay that felt like denial, but bought you time to evolve. You had a vision, a goal, a dream that burned so bright you could almost taste it. You mapped it out, took the steps, told the universe, I'm ready. And then, nothing. Delays. Silence. Roadblocks that made no sense. Emails unanswered. Doors that once seemed wide open suddenly shut tight. And the most painful part, you knew you were prepared. You had the skill, you had the passion, you had the inner fire. But the timeline wouldn't move. You kept asking, what more do I have to prove? Why is this not happening yet? Scorpio. What you didn't realize is that the delay wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Because here's what the universe knows about you that you sometimes forget. You can arrive at your destiny too early and still lose it. Not because you weren't good enough, but because the version of you back then couldn't hold it. That dream you wanted, it came with responsibility, spiritual visibility, energetic exposure, and had it arrived on your schedule, you might have crumbled under the weight of it. Maybe you still doubted your voice. Maybe your boundaries weren't strong enough yet. Maybe you hadn't fully shed the habits of your old self. The one who tolerated less gave too much, feared being seen. So the universe paused everything, slowed down the momentum, created cosmic red lights, not to test your patience, but to allow your transformation to catch up with your vision. And here's the miracle most people miss. During that delay, you grew, you healed, you redefined what success really meant, you refined your intuition, you began aligning with your soul, not just your ambition. And when the time was finally right, when the inner you matched the outer dream, things began to move. Faster than you expected, easier than before. Because now, you were truly ready. Life lesson from time 9. Delay is not denial. The universe is never late. It's just making sure your soul is strong enough to carry what your ego once craved. Be grateful for the time you thought you were stuck, because that stillness was your cocoon. Time 10. The breakdown that became a sacred rebirth. There was a moment in your life when everything collapsed. The identity you built, the relationships you counted on, the roles you played so well for so long, gone like ashes scattered by a storm you never saw coming. You didn't just feel broken, you felt stripped bare, like the ground beneath you had vanished and all that was left was the silence of your own soul. Scorpio, let's not pretend you've walked through the kind of pain that makes people question the point of continuing. You've sat alone with your shadow, asked the universe, why am I still here, and meant it. But here's the truth, no one told you at the time. That breakdown wasn't the end, it was the doorway. The cracking of a shell that could no longer hold the person you were becoming. Because you don't rise through comfort, you rise through death. Not literal death, but ego death. The death of illusions, the death of old identities, the death of people-pleasing, overgiving, shrinking. And yes, it's violent, it's ugly, it's silent, lonely, sacred. But that moment, the one that nearly ended you, was actually an initiation. The universe knew that your next level couldn't be built on false foundations, so it allowed it all to fall, to burn, to leave, so that nothing would remain except what was real. And what emerged from the ashes wasn't the same Scorpio. It was a new version of you, more raw, more aligned, more powerful, not because you avoided pain, but because you walked through it and found your essence on the other side. People who knew the old you might not recognize what you've become, and they're not supposed to, because you were never meant to stay who you were. You were meant to transform over and over again. That's the sacred cycle of Scorpio. Death, rebirth, ascension. And this time, you didn't just survive the fire, you became it. Life lesson from time 10. When everything falls apart, it's not always destruction. Sometimes it's sacred demolition. The universe isn't punishing you, it's preparing the soul space for the next version of your power. Trust the ruins. Your resurrection lives there. Conclusion, you were never abandoned. You were protected in silence. Scorpio, you've walked through fire. You've trusted the wrong ones. You've questioned your own strength more times than you'd ever admit out loud. But if you look back carefully spiritually, you'll begin to see it. The rejections, the delays, the disappearances, the breakdowns. They weren't accidents, they weren't failures, they were sacred interventions. You see, the universe doesn't always show up with flashing signs and angelic voices. Sometimes it shows up in loss, in confusion, in the why did this happen to me moments. But behind the veil, there was always a pattern, a protection, a deeper knowing that your path was never meant to be ordinary because your purpose never was. Scorpio, you were never built for shallow waters. You were built for transformation, for carrying truth through darkness, for rising from places others don't even dare to enter. And so the universe, it didn't protect you loudly, it protected you in silence, because it knew that your spirit was ancient, that your soul would understand the lesson even if your heart broke in the process. So the next time something leaves your life without explanation, pause, breathe, and ask yourself not why me, but What am I being protected from? Because the truth is, you were never forgotten, you were chosen. Final message to the viewer. If this video spoke to your soul, if you've ever looked back and realized that something painful actually saved you, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment below. Tell us one moment where you now see the universe was protecting you, even if you didn't realize it at the time. You never know who you might help by sharing your story. And if you're a Scorpio or someone on a healing path, subscribe to the Path to Buddha Wisdom for more deep, soulful insight. Because around here, we don't just talk about zodiac signs, we decode the soul. You made it this far and you're not done rising yet.